The crazy thing is, this never ends. Even when you die, call my office now. If we take you as a client, I sure, or you'll pay nothing.
Call for your free information 3333. That's 800-462-3333. Financial Group is not a firm.
This story is called The Ugly Truth About Timeshare. If you think you've done your family by buying a timeshare, you need my help. Hello, I'm Chuck McDowell, CEO and founder of Wesley Financial Group. 10 years ago, I started helping folks cancel timeshare. In the process, started what's now called the timeshare cancellation industry. Timeshare is the only thing that you can buy that you can't tell me how much it's going to cost or when it's going to end. When you buy a timeshare, you give them a blank check to fill out any amount they want for annual maintenance and assessment fees. The crazy thing is, this never ends. Even when you die, your family's now going to be stuck with this burden.
By their clothes, their age, the way they speak? Would you notice a 60-year-old boy who got his first job, not for extra spending money, but to help feed his little sisters? Or a mother whose impotence goes to bed hungry so her kids can have dinner? Or a 14-year-old girl who signs up to every after-school activity, not to make friends, but just to get something to eat? Or a retiree who fell ill and had to choose
between getting medicine or groceries.
I am the one in 8 Americans who struggle with hunger. People you pass by every day but never knew were hungry. I am hungered in.
Hunger can be hard to recognize. At IamHungerInAmerica.org. Brought to you by Feeding America, 200 Food Banks Strong, and the Ad Council.
Parkview Animal Hospital in Lincoln, it's not just their professional care that sets them apart, but their warm staff and state-of-the-art facilities. Whether it's for a routine checkup or a comprehensive medical procedure, at Parkview, your pet isn't just another number, but a valued member of their caring family. Visit them at pahlincoln.com today and in person just south of 14th and Pine Lake Road. Parkview Animal Hospital, your pet, our passion. For happier, healthier furry friends.
This is Sunday Rewind.
Take it back now, y'all.
On 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com. Now, here are your hosts, Tom Stevens and Mike Melbye.
Welcome in, another Husker Rewind. Tom Stevens here, Mike Melbye there. Every Sunday, 5 to 7, and it's getting good. Fall camp starts tomorrow. Lot of really good guests on this show as well. Bill Bush will be in studio this hour.
Yes. I already got his camera up. I'm already ready.
All right. Nice job for the technical abilities of Mike. Otherwise, we would never be on the air every week. We're figuring it out. We just start pressing buttons when we get in here, and some of them are right, some of them are wrong, but we usually get on the air.
Your piano playing gets better every week.
Well, it's
that intro. Man. Okay, so I was thinking about this as I was driving into the studio. Exactly how much breaking news has there been since we were on the air a week ago?
A lot of times we'll go into Wednesday or Thursday, and I'll call you and I'll say, I don't know what we're going to talk about. There's nothing going on. And then, Pat Fitzgerald did something really stupid. Yeah. And then the next week, hey, there's nothing going on. Oh, yeah. Bob Wager did something kind of silly. So I guess we're okay. I mean, good from a radio standpoint. You hate the falling of others. You don't want anybody else to fall down, but it helped our radio show.
No, but I'm just sitting here. The starting gate, I'm looking at it. This is the pared down version of the starting gate. There's still 11 items on this. I had I can't mention all of this stuff. So, I lied. There's 12.
Well, we do the starting gate every week to represent all the things that have happened during the week. And that's the goal of Husker Rewind, is to rewind from the Husker week, all the things that happen. So we might as well get to it. It's Husker Rewind, starting gate. doesn't make sense to a lot of people still, but it makes sense in my head. That we
Because we started the day of the Preakness
that's right.
last year.
That's
So,
right.
I'm
you don't
going to
like
go.
it, you don't like it.
I'm going to go
Sorry.
chronologically here, kind of. There's some national stuff in here, Big Ten stuff, Husker stuff. But Monday morning at the Galen Center, where USC men's basketball practices, Bronny James suffers a cardiac arrest, rushed to the hospital. He was in ICU for a few hours. He's been released, seems to be doing okay. On Tuesday, Jim Leonard, hired by Brett Bielema at Illinois as a senior football analyst. That raised a lot of eyebrows. And then later on Tuesday, it came out Michigan's Jim Harbaugh is facing a possible 4-game suspension for lying to NCAA investigators. And he goes, how could I have been lying? I don't remember.
That's a lie.
Wednesday, story broke on the website Front Office Sports about issues within the culture of the Minnesota football program. I should say the elite Minnesota football program. It was mentioned by numerous former players that there was a fleck bank where players could earn credits so that they wouldn't be punished if they failed a drug test or broke a team rule. Among reported punishments was that if a player did not have enough credits, were brutal physical workouts, which, by the way, are not allowed by the NCAA. That's a whole other can of worms. Hey, Husker Hoops, they're in Spain. They should have been playing today. The game got moved to tomorrow, so they're going to play a team from Madrid tomorrow, a team from Valencia on Wednesday, and then a team in Barcelona next Saturday.
Their tallest player is going to be Bryce Williams at 6'7",
who's going to launch 48 threes in these 3 games
alone.
Small
ball, baby.
Wisconsin was picked to win the Big Ten volleyball title this year. Nebraska second. Lexi Rodriguez is the only one to preseason all-conference team. I'm going to make a prediction right now. Harper Murray will be at least second team.
Number 1 recruit in the country, right?
All Big Ten this year. Yeah. Let's see. Wednesday reported that the Board of Regents at the University of Colorado held a meeting to discuss moving back to the Big 12. And then they scheduled another meeting for Thursday. That Thursday it was announced Colorado's going back to the Big 12. 13 years after bolting for the Pac-12 because of instability. Now they're going back to the Big 12 because of the instability of the Pac-12, which now only has 9 teams after the 23 season. Rumor has it the Big 12 is looking to add 1 more school, so they have an even 14. Who do you think it's going to be out of these 5 or the field? UConn, Arizona, Gonzaga, Utah, San Diego State, or somebody we haven't thought of?
Utah would be my choice.
Oh, that's who. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. San Diego State, how'd that all start?
Well, they were going to go to the Pac-12.
Yeah.
But then they needed the Pac-12 to get the media rights thing done so that they could and get the invitation. And then Pac-12 is still dragging their feet. Could their new commissioner be any worse at his job?
Is the Pac-12 over?
Yeah.
I mean, it is, but what happens to Oregon and Washington? I've heard
Big Ten or SEC.
The thing is, I've heard Sean Callahan, I believe, say this. Maybe it wasn't Sean Callahan, somebody like him, somebody in that genre. Say Oregon doesn't really provide you anymore in a contract.
No,
for the
Big Ten. Washington. There's just not enough TV sets.
And you don't want Stanford. I mean, I like Stanford, good football program, but they're kind of where Northwestern is now. Academics, they have such rigorous rules to get you into school that does that really help you in the age of NIL and the transfer portal? I don't know.
I don't know. We'll see who's going to wind up joining the Big 12 and to be that 14th team and what happens to the Pac-12. I'm just going to say Matt Rule kind of he became a pretty big star at Big Ten Media Days on Thursday. There's a ton to unpack from Big Ten Media Days Wednesday and Thursday. We had one hell of a contingent there.
Yeah.
One of those guys, Jay Foreman, will be here.
I think he's going to be in studio. He just texted me. He said, "Can I come in studio?" I said, "Can you come in studio? You can do anything you want."
I was going to say you're on.
But I think so. I think both of our guests, a studio guests, are going to be in studio.
Yep.
Which makes sense. Bill Bush will be here, I believe, within minutes, and then Jay Foreman will be here at 6. Evan Bland also on the show.
Yeah, I warned you. This is long. Talua Tagovailoa, the Maryland quarterback, says that he was offered $1.5 million to transfer to an unnamed SEC school. Came out in a story this week. You know what's funny?
Wouldn't it be?
I didn't even. I was like, yeah.
Wouldn't it be Alabama? They don't have a quarterback this year. I mean, when would you ever say? I mean, obviously they had a Heisman winner.
Yeah.
And now Alabama's looking at, I mean, who's our quarterback? Is it a Notre Dame transfer? I mean, they're not in a good situation quarterback wise. I wonder if it was Alabama.
Because
his brother played there, right?
Yeah, my thought was immediately either Alabama or Auburn.
No.
But who knows? He didn't name the team. Last night in Las Vegas, folks, Terrence Bud Crawford, it's been said for years, he's one of the greatest pound for pound. He is the current pound for pound best that there is. The guy that everybody said, till he meets Errol Spence, then we'll see what happens. Spence came into the fight with the IBF, WBA, and WBC 147-pound titles, and he won the first round against Crawford. And then Bud Crawford made him look like a kid in his first professional fight.
So good.
And Crawford, after the fight, said at one point in the second, he hit me with these two, big overhand rights. And I knew that was the hardest punch he could throw. And my immediate thought was, this is going to be a long night for him.
Yeah.
So Bud Crawford in the second, after not winning on the scorecard in the first round, in the second round, Bud Crawford's sitting there kind of laughing to himself going, I feel bad for what I'm about to do to this kid. Well, young man, they're both in their 30s.
I don't think he felt too bad.
No, because he's now going to be considered literally one of the greatest.
And he's getting on in age.
He's 35.
He's 35 years old. So how many more years does he have left? I saw him fight at PBA probably 5-6 years ago.
Yeah.
It was fantastic. The guy's in that Sugar Ray realm.
Yeah.
I mean, he's one of the best of all time.
Yeah, I completely agree. Yeah, he knocked Spence down. First time in Spence's career, he'd been on the mat in the second round. Then he knocked him down twice in the seventh. And then finally, referee Harvey Dock stopped it at 2:32 of the ninth. And I mean, Spence complained, but it's like, dude, your eyes are crossed. There is more blood on your face than has ever, no.
What would it take for you to get in the ring with Bud Crawford? I mean, if somebody said, here's 10 grand.
Can he hit me? Is it like a boxing match? Or I just have to stand in the ring and Bud Crawford.
Could you take one punch from Bud Crawford?
Oh, absolutely not.
I don't think I could either.
I put some boxing gloves on when I was a younger kid, and I was in a couple of kind of organized. These were actually organized fights, kind of getting ready to try to go.
My dad would organize them sometimes in the backyard when he had enough with my brothers and I fighting.
Yeah.
So okay, put on the gloves. We're going in the backyard, and I was punching my brother pretty well. Like I could move and punch and move. Oh, it took one landing from him, and I was done. He's a big dude. And that was my brother.
Yeah.
I can't imagine that type of thing.
Well, I tried box. I was thinking I want to go be a Golden Gloves boxer and all that stuff. And I kind of tried a little bit. And the first time I got a couple of pretty good shots, even with the headgear and all that stuff on, I was like, yeah, no, I'm good.
No,
I don't. Nope.
Steve Sipple did it for a while.
Yeah.
Back in his younger days. He was pretty good.
Nebraska fall camp starts tomorrow. They're all staying in the Selleck dorm. One of the people not staying in the Selleck dorm is Bob Wager. He resigned on Friday after a DUI arrest. He is going to be replaced by 35-year-old Josh Martin. Martin joined the staff earlier this year as a special teams analyst. He has worked at the FBS level for 7 years with stops at SMU, where he did coach tight ends, and at Arizona State.
And that's where we'll start the show. Obviously, the big news of the weekend. Bob Wager resigns, 52. He was cited at 1:30 Wednesday morning. It was a first offense thing, but he had an open container, it sounds like. There was careless driving involved. He refused a chemical test, a breathalyzer. And when you do something like that, this is it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And off the Starter Hammond text line, Crowbait chimed in. He goes, I'm cheap, 10 grand and Bud can knock me out. I don't have very many brain cells left to lose.
I mean, everybody says that. I mean, everybody thinks they're tough until they take a punch from, Mike Tyson or Bud Crawford or somebody like that. I think I would. I think I could take one punch, but I'm not sure that I could. Like, if it's Tyson in his heyday, would you do it? No. I mean, he won several fights that way where guys just laid there for hours.
Yeah.
And Bud Crawford, that's not really what he does. He usually gets into the 5th, 6th, 7th round. But that guy's elite. I don't think I would do it for 10 grand. It would have to be 100 grand. It would have to be significantly more than 10.
Like, the thing is, like, you've got to be able to defend yourself in some way. You can't just sit there and say my hands are tied behind my back and he can punch me once.
Well, I could put the gloves in front of my face, and he could just hit the gloves, and I would still be knocked out cold.
Oh yeah, same here.
I mean, the force of his punch.
I'd need 7 digits. I'm sorry. Like I said, I've been punched in the face a couple of times in my life. Right. I don't like it.
Yeah, I don't think I'd do it for 10 grand anyway. Back to Wager. He has resigned. He coached for 17 years at Arlington, Texas, at the high school ranks, 26 overall. I thought it was a pretty good hire when Matt Rule made that hire. I thought, well, your goal is to get into Texas, and that's what Nebraska has done. He got a few guys out of there. I wasn't incredibly impressed by the way he spoke to the media. And I've heard rumblings that other media people felt the same way, that, this is a good hire. Is it a great hire? I don't think so. It allows Nebraska to get back in Texas, but now he's gone, and you replace him with Josh Martin. And if you just
got Texas ties, by the way,
right? And if you just put those two resumes side by side, and I didn't know anything about either guy, I probably would choose Josh Martin in the first place over Bob Wager.
Yeah,
he has actual college coaching experience, right? Yeah. I mean, he coached at SMU, and he's had some experience before that. I just think that it's not that big of a deal for Nebraska. We do know that tight end is one of the stronger positions. You got Nate Borkercher. You've got Eric Gilbert, who may or may not get his waiver from the NCAA. You got Thomas Fedoni. You got some pieces to work with, I think, for Nebraska. I just don't think it's that big of a deal.
Well, I think it's a big deal from a continuity standpoint, and it's a disruption. It's going to be, bottom line is the guy that's been your position coach for the last 8 months is now no longer your position coach, and you got somebody new. Granted, you know them because they've been with the program for a few months, but the terminology is going to stay the same. Plays are going to stay the same, but the message and the way he coaches may be a little bit different. It's not going to be seamless. There's going to be a bump or two just because losing a position coach, man, that's a guy you're building a bond with and all that, and then plus just the circumstance with how and why you resigned. I mean, it's drama, and the last thing you want heading into your preseason camp is drama. Well, you got it.
You nip it in the bud. Yeah, if you're Matt Rule, and I think it's a good idea that he did that. I mean, do you really want to use that card this early in your tenure? I think back to Keith Williams in the Mike Riley era, and Keith Williams was probably the best recruiter on the staff. Now, did he really he wasn't here long enough to really make a difference in recruiting. But he had a DUI, and Mike Riley, who always said, do the right thing, decided to keep him. And I kind of agreed with it at the time. Here's a guy who's a high profile. He's a good defensive backs coach, I believe, is what he did.
Receivers.
Was he receivers? Yeah. That's right. He coached receivers. But I thought it was a good idea to keep him, and they did. And was it worth it overall? I don't know. But I think Mike Riley hadn't just started his tenure, right?
Well, no, and the thing with Keith Williams had a prior DUI. Now, it had been about, if I remember right, like 14 to 17 years prior, but he did have a prior DUI. And, at the end of the day, it is what it is. It
was 2017 or 16, something in there.
Yeah, and then it was in the early 2000s when he had a prior one. Yeah. But like with Wager, and that's the whole thing. I mean, I'm sure we're going to have Evan Bland on at some point. We recorded with Evan, and a brief conversation about the fact of, what are we going to ask Matt Rule tomorrow? Well, we're going to ask about Bob Wager. And, is this something that is a carved in stone rule of Matt Rule's staff? That if you get popped for something like a DUI, that it's just you're done? Or was it something where they had a discussion after it happened and they elected that it's in the best interest of both parties?
Yeah.
Maybe Matt will shed some light on it. I get it. It's public record, et cetera, but at the same time, it's a man's life, man. And he made a mistake, and he's obviously paying a pretty severe price that he's losing a college football.
I mean, it's a $300,000 a year job.
Yeah. And so, I mean, I hate the keyboard warriors that get out and start, throwing out, oh, he deserved it. No, he didn't deserve it. The guy made a mistake.
He made a bad mistake. Yeah. It was a dumb mistake. Yeah. I mean, it was just, especially, all those things surrounding it. Open container, why are you doing that? And obviously, why are you driving after drinking? I mean, I'm sure Matt Rule has stood up to his players and probably intimated to his coaches, hey, if you drink, call a cab. I mean, call an Uber, call me, call anyone. Because he was driving right around Memorial Stadium at 1:00 in the morning, 1:30 in the morning.
Yeah.
But I mean, it makes me think, how often does this happen in college football? And maybe Bill Busch would be. I mean, he's been around a lot of coaches, who made a lot of mistakes. I want to ask Bill a lot of different things, not only about Wager. What was it like to work for Urban Meyer, for Ed Orgeron?
Yeah.
How much does he miss the coaching profession in general? Who's the best head coach he's ever worked for? You would say Urban Meyer, right? But maybe it isn't. So there's a lot of things I want to talk about. But the toxic culture of college football, now you have another coach accused of it in PJ Fleck. Is this where we're going? It feels like, Kirk Ferentz went through it at Iowa. Obviously, Pat Fitzgerald got fired over a toxic culture at Northwestern. Is this something that we're going to be hearing about once a week now? Is this just the generation, or is it just a Big Ten thing?
Don't ask me. That's going to be a great question for Bill Busch when he jumps in studio. So
I do want to get into the break rather quickly, because we do have a lot of things that we have to get to. I don't even know if we're going to get to all of them,
but we're going to try.
We're going to try. Bill, as soon as here of early break, he's now on early break with Sip and Jake, by the way.
Oh, I know.
If that's not the best show in sports in Nebraska, then I don't know what is.
Well, no, it simply is.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
It's the best show, certainly, that I've heard as far as morning shows are concerned. Bill has really added a flavor to that show, which was already good with Sip and Jake.
Yeah.
But Bill Busch has such insight, and we'll hopefully talk to him very soon.
Yep.
Coming up next, 93.7 The Ticket, theticketfm.com. He's Mike Melbye. I'm Tom Stevens, back with more after this.
This is your captain. We are going to be experiencing some slight turbulence. Please fasten your... Oh, hold on. Just got to go my cat.
Imagine the parent was as confident as you texting and driving.
Visit StopTextStopWrecks.org. A message brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, Project Yellow Light, and the Ad Council.
Hey guys, Jake Sorensen here from Early Break, and on behalf of the entire 93.7 The Ticket team, we are excited this fall. We are teaming up with Husker Extra for the Big Red Brunch. We'll have big names from now and the past from Husker sports, and that all starts on Wednesday, August 9th for the Big Red Brunch Golf Scramble at Tiburon Golf Club in Gretna. Sign up to play today at omaha.com and find the Big Red Brunch tab. You won't want to miss this on August 9th at Tiburon in Gretna.
I know that a lot of times, Mom, it might not seem like I'm listening to you, but I am. I hear you. And what you say really does matter to me.
I mean, let's be honest. No kid likes rules, but I get why we have them. I hear you, and I know it's because you care.
For more information about talking with your kids about underage use of alcohol and other drugs, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
Sponsored by DHHS and aired in cooperation with the Nebraska Broadcasters Association and this station.
This is on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
Welcome back to Husker Rewind here on 93.7 The Ticket, theticketfm.com. If you're streaming on the Sartor Heyman live stream, you can watch on Twitter, Twitch, Facebook, and YouTube. If you'd like to join the show, 402-464-5685 is the Honda of Lincoln hotline, as well as the Sartor Heyman text line. In studio with us now, former Nebraska assistant coach and 1/3 of Early Break, 7 The Ticket, Bill Busch. Bill, welcome to Husker Rewind. Thrilled to have you.
Oh, absolutely. Thanks for I enjoyed getting the text to get a chance to stop in. Look forward to doing it. And I know there that mentioned about maybe calling in. I said, shoot, I'll just stop by the studio, make it easier.
We sure appreciate it. Bill Busch, of course, former coach at Nebraska, now doing radio for a living. Do you think he'll do it for a while?
I know this. Number one thing is that I really enjoy it, and I get treated so well. So when you get it's like part of an organization that is just first class and professional from top to bottom, makes it a lot of fun. With the way that DP and Rebecca run the ticket, and then obviously all the talent that works on air, and then obviously to get a chance to work with Sip and Jake. Those guys are incredible.
Well, you're known as a good recruiter. Did you think you'd be a good radio guy? I mean, you seem like a natural if you went to do television or play-by-play.
That's very kind of you. I don't see myself as a natural on either one of those things, but I do greatly appreciate the kind words. Like I said, there's a lot more to it, like any part, and I knew that going into it. So it wasn't ever a time when I was like, yeah, just throw me on there and I'll start talking. So there's a lot of prep stuff and things that go with it. But I really enjoy our show so much just because the three personalities seem to mix really well, and we have a lot of fun with it. And then being on, I've had a chance to be on some other shows also. And then like I said, we had Jay Foreman in on Friday for SIP, and Jay does an awesome job. And just like those guys right after us with Raf and AD, so it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, Jay's actually going to jump in studio with us next hour, so we're going to have a lot of fun. So, the elephant in the room, the breaking news on Friday, Bob Wager, unfortunate, drove with the open container and everything else that's been released. It's going to wind up being an aggravated DUI, it sounds, which is over 0.15. You've been on a staff, I'm sure, at some point, somewhere along the lines where somebody's kind of got themselves into a little bit of hot water, a little bit of trouble. How does the rest of the staff handle it? What's talked about with you guys?
Well, I'm sure, like all the staffs that I've been on, expectations are set very, very clearly as far as how you act and the things that you do. And I'm sure that was the case with Coach Rule. I'm sure there's numerous conversations. You don't run an organization like the University of Nebraska football and have the expertise that Coach Rule has, that he wouldn't have had everything pretty detailed out of how you're to be able to handle yourself and do the things you have. So, with that being said, with the situation, I have read up on it. Number one thing is just, very, very lucky that no one was hurt. That's the number one thing, is that, because that could be that when you have a chance, you can regroup your life and you can regroup somebody, but it's hard to after if something happens in a tragedy with that. Also, I know there's been some takes on how that works out with, is there a suspension? Do they do time? That's just on the professionals in the room with Trev and Coach Rule. But if you put yourself on the other side of it, it'd be hard to tell a mom or a dad or anyone that was involved in a death in a drunk driving accident and say that it's just not that big of it's something that should be. So that it goes both ways. So I see every side of it. Do I think someone's life should be completely upended on that? That's hard. That's hard because it is definitely a changing situation. But I do understand the other side of it with it.
He's now on early break with Sip and Jake, of course, former assistant at the University of Nebraska, Bill Bush, with this. How has it been dealt with in the past where you've been? I mean, it's probably changed. I mean, Bob Huggins, it just happened to him a couple of weeks ago in Cincinnati a second time, and he resigned, and then he said, no, I haven't resigned. He showed it back up at the office. But how is it usually explained to you when you take a gig, and you've been all over the world of college football? Is it different now than it used to be?
I would say it's different. I know the one thing that is different that's discussed on staff is that, never say a word that you don't think is on mic. That you're basically a hot mic every place that you're at.
Sure.
There's no such term as off the record.
Yeah.
That just doesn't happen. Hey, let me talk to you guys for a second, but this is off the record now.
Right.
That when you're talking in a public situation, that's one. I do believe that in most places, administration doesn't paint you into a corner or any sort of leadership. I wouldn't say administration, leadership of how they're going to, because every situation is different.
Yeah.
And sometimes if you paint yourself in a corner of, okay, if I do this, this is what it is. Yeah. It's the automatic dismissal. Then you have yourself, and you're in a hard line.
Yeah.
You're in a hard line situation right now. I know myself. I know I would never feel that if what's the legal limit? 0.8? Is that right? Is that the
0.08? Yep.
0.08. I would always assume if I was ever pulled over, which would never happen because I just don't do that, fortunately. But if it was a 0.81, I'd assume I'd lost my job.
Yeah.
That's how I would have looked at myself. There was never a time where I walked in the next day like, hey, I was right this close. I was coming back from something. I would not assume that I would maintain my job at that point.
So throughout your career, you've traveled around the country. You've coached on a lot of different staffs. who is the head coach that you literally, even today, are like, I'll tell you what, he knew everything inside and out. He's the guy. He's probably the best head coach I've ever seen or that I've ever worked for.
No chance I can answer it with one, because it's a little bit from everyone. Because here's the reason I say that. I've just been, and this is just sheer luck, to have a chance to work for Tom Osborne, Barry Alvarez, Kyle Whittingham, Urban Meyer, Ed Ogeron. I mean, there's going to be 5 or 6 guys I work for that are going to be Hall of Famers, and several of them are already college Hall of Famers. So everyone had a different vibe to them and on how they handled everything from top down with it. So, like I said, every single group that I with was tremendous. But like I said, but I will say this: when each one of them spoke, it was very crystal clear of what the expectations were of you. There was never a time when it was gray when they started. I spoke with some, like I said, Kyle Whittingham was probably one of the sharpest at with his staff. He was one of the all-time best. Barry was incredible. Coach Osborne had his, Barry and Tom, I see is just like the same as far as how I respected both of them and approached it completely different. Aspects of how they went about some things. Not completely different. There's some different ways how they handled some things, or how they dealt with everyone. And it was just different. And so everyone has their own way to be able to fit and be able to know it and to be able to do. And for the most part, for each one of those coaches, also it was basically 4th and 1 every day. So the really good coaches, it was 4th and 1 every day, and not like they were breathing down your neck, but you just knew the expectations of day to day. That's what it was.
I think 3 of those guys that you mentioned won national titles.
Yes.
Tom Osborne, Urban Meyer, Ed Orgeron, all won national titles. What separates a Hall of Famer from every other coach? They're all completely different personalities. When I was growing up, I kept hearing Tom Osborne's never going to win a national title. I mean, he can't be Bob Devaney. And then he finally broke through. Is it luck? Is it just perseverance? Is it talent? I mean, because everybody has talent that's a head coach. What separates the good coaches from those guys?
Well, the one thing that's always difficult is if it comes down to just winning percentage, because I know some coaches that are just unreal that might be hovering in that 550 to 6 range like that, 60% winning rates, and they're doing everything known to man. They don't have the same amount of resources that other coaches have.
Sure.
And so there's a lot to it on being blessed at the right time with the certain things hitting just correctly. Yeah. But again, all the Hall of Famers are all over time. Yeah. You don't have the ones that are just the brief one-hit wonders type of thing that they have to be up and down.
Howard Schnellenberger comes to mind as a one-hit wonder. I mean, he was a good football coach, but kind of everything just came together in '83.
He had an unbelievable year in '83. He did. And so when I look at him, there's so many coaches, and I say this all the time, even about myself. I'm like, I've been in unbelievable coaching situations, and I'm like, I know coaches that are just as good as me, probably better than me, that never even got a shot to coach at some of the levels I was able to coach at.
One of the things that came out last week was about the Minnesota football program a couple of weeks ago, Northwestern. And bottom line, the culture in those programs, and obviously some nasty stuff going on at Northwestern. Who knows how bad it's going to be at Minnesota. Do you think stuff like that is overly prevalent, or is it just you've got it's because this doesn't seem like with PJ Fleck, a couple of guys didn't like to work that hard. It seems like it may have been, a little bit more than that, but culture is the key word for every head coach with every program. What are your thoughts on what's been going on breaking here in the Big Ten in the last couple of weeks?
Well, the one thing that stands out is it's very awkward time that generally when at this time of year, everything is very positive. And so right now, usually everything at this time is very just off the charts positive. And right now there's a few places where it's not. Obviously Northwestern being one. I sure don't put Northwestern Minnesota in that same category whatsoever. And I have a hard time. I've already, I pushed back on that on Friday on air with Jay and with Jake. Is that I have a really hard time. Seems like there's a few people that kind of have an axe to grind, and boy, there's a lot of people I know that worked for PJ Fleck, and I've talked to them all, and they're like shaking their head no. And I know a lot of people that have reached out to past players and they're shaking their head no. And so that's kind of what I go off. But but things can steamroll very fast. Then you have also, you have Harbaugh is supposedly going to be suspended for 4 games.
Sure.
So the start, usually right now, everyone you talk to has great hope. Everyone's got hope. Everyone's got things going the right direction. And there's a few places in the Big Ten where it's interesting. And no matter what I feel or think about Minnesota, there's still a storyline that is there. There is a storyline there. I thought PJ Fleck crushed it on media days. I thought he did a great job on stepping right up and like that. Yeah, you want the mic? Put it right over here.
You got to be who you are. I mean, I thought the whole row the boat thing was a sales job, but it's always, he's consistent with who he is all the time. It doesn't seem phony because he says it all the time. I mean, he says the same thing.
They mentioned also that everyone had to clap when he came in the room. He didn't do it. They had to clap again and be louder at that. But you know what? I've been on a lot of places where everybody claps when you come in. That's a energy starter to the meeting. It's not a praise me to the meeting. So that's what I'm talking about. Things like that come up when you've been in those rooms and been through that. I was shaking my head pretty
Matt Rule's
hard
got a little bit of that.
I mean, everybody has some. You want to have some energy. You want to have some things you do. I also read about something where PJ Fleck, where I think every penny that's raised through Row the Boat goes to a hospital. So that one penny goes as was that mentioned? Probably not.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm not here on the soapbox box for him, but I'm always a little pro coach on some things because sit in that seat and it's great to have the money. It is really good like that. But like I said, there's people at every profession that don't like you. How many people are? I mean, I said, you guys know who Betty White is, the actor?
Sure, I love Betty. We miss her.
Everyone loves her.
Yeah,
she's like the only one.
Yeah.
That's it. I heard someone say the other day they didn't like Johnny Cash. I go, you're crazy. How can that be? But my point is, everybody has some. It's like that don't care for you. I mentioned it on the radio the other day. I'm like, I'm sure people turn into our show, and for some reason, they don't like the addition of me on the show. That's just the way how life is.
They're crazy. They're nuts. He is of Early Break with Sip and Jake. Bill Bush, former Nebraska football assistant, and now on our show. But you hear a lot more than I remember growing up hearing about the toxic culture of PJ Fleck or Pat Fitzgerald or Jim Harbaugh. You mentioned him. Kirk Ferentz went through it a couple of years ago. Urban Meyer, your old coach, certainly went through that. Is this just the era that we're in, or is this always going to be? Is this always been a thing?
I don't know if it's always been a thing, but like I said, it's just when you're gonna lead a group like you're gonna lead, and it's just like what Matt Rule's doing now, great job of it. I don't know what he's in charge of 300 plus probably. When we start talking about, he oversees the training room, he oversees the strength room, he oversees food and nutrition as far as what's dealt with the football team, and he's got a roster of 150 plus, and he's got this whole staff. So you have to have the ability to lead and be your own person, and this is how we're going to do it. And sometimes it's not going to be perfect. It would be great to just be able to never raise your voice, walk in, just have a calm conversation. Here's what I'd like done today. It gets done perfectly, all those things. Sometimes there's going to be spirited conversation, and especially in the highly competitive. And now,
were you a yeller ever?
With that? There'd be times that it was more to get my voice would be very loud on the field just to get points across, not at yelling at the person at the person.
It's a big field. There's a lot of guys out there.
And the position I coached led to loudness because of defensive backs who were so far apart from each other. A lot of times the group we'd line up,
but they think you're yelling at them even if you're not.
And so sometimes there's some truth to sometime with players. They, 49 great comments and one negative can be like that. But if you treat them fair and you show them that you love them, then like I said, then you have a chance to be able to. And then when I say coach them hard, it means that hey, we're going to you have to be able to correct things that have to be corrected. This is going to have to happen through all that. But the current staff's doing a great job with it.
Preseason camp starts tomorrow, and I want to focus on the part of the game that Nebraska struggled with the last several years. 2 years ago, 121st in special teams. You took over last year, helping out when the changes were made, and they wind up overnight. But it was obvious there were some things that you did differently, etc. Can you walk us through a little bit about some of the things that fans can look for with how special teams are done better, properly, et cetera?
Sure. And there's some of those like that. We went from that to 70th, which is kind of, and this is for the players, not for me, is not really quite fair to them because, like on punt return, we went from 128th to 7th. Punt block was 128th to 7th. Kickoff punt went up over on the critical spots. We went up 491 spots over the one area that we did not have very good success with was on kickoff return. We just got very slightly better, not enough to. I mean, we got better. Part of it is I believe that when I've been very good at coaching teams because of talent, is kickoff return is with big tight end cover up bodies. And so like when I was at Wisconsin, we were really good. Yeah. We traveled 5 or 6 tight ends. And we had 6'5", 260-pound guys that could just cover people up and give your returner a chance. And we didn't have quite as many of those bodies as what we'd like to have had. And just didn't, I know this. I know we worked the heck out of it and was drilled really good. And our assistant coaches were outstanding. Just didn't get a lot of play in that area. But the number one thing is, with special teams is what's really fun about coaching is now you're working with the offense, the defense, you have everyone involved. So yeah, connection is probably the number one thing. How do you connect with I've got to be able to get this wide receiver over here to be able to play and go down and cover punts. He was not recruited for that reason to do that. So how to be able to connect all those things together, and then just the ultimate organization. So everyone knows from that when that whistle blows. I used to always say transition was part of the drill, and I would film it too. I would film the transition when the whistle blew from these cameras we had above, and I'd come back and I'd show it to him. I go, I see guys running out of the building from the indoor to the outdoor to where we're going, and some guys were going about 3/4 speed, and we got that changed. So all those little things breeds confidence. The way here's what we're doing, and then you stay, and they know they're supposed to go to this section. This is their coach. This is the drill we're doing. So we've already showed them all the drills. Here's what's going to happen. And they start seeing the production and they see the energy with what's going on with it. And you're very precise. And the meeting is very sharp. All those little things just start to gain ground for you.
I've heard the explanation this way, and I don't know if it's right or wrong. DP had said it all the time in the first couple of years of the Frost era. They don't use enough starters on special teams. There's too many walk-ons.
You always have your best players out there. I always say, if you looked at us last year, there was a lot of starters playing.
But there hadn't been previous to that. Previous to you, there really hadn't been.
Yeah, you want to have your best players out there. There is, and there's certain times when they can do certain things. I know on like kickoff cover, I used to try to get the 2 starting linebackers one behind the other, and then one went one time, then the next starter went, and so they had a chance to be off on a deal. Punt was invite only. There's 0 options. If you look at our punt this last year, it was up front. It was Garrett Nelson. It was Luke Reimer. It was Nick Heinrichs. It was all those guys that were on that phase. Then there's some roles on sometimes where it's like, hey, this player has I call them LRPs, limited role players, that might be very limited on number of snaps. They'll play that game, but they can do this one task really good, and then that's a chance to use them. That's a chance to be able to have those guys to be able to go in and excel.
I know Mike wants to ask another question. As we could sit here all day and ask questions, but before we leave the special teams thing, and I'm asked this all the time, what happened? You're up 11, onside kick, and I'm sure you've explained what happened before, but still, I've never seen it happen in college football. Northwestern last year, you're up 11. Onside kick. It wasn't your call.
It was just a decision that we wanted to kick it. Could I have stopped it? Yes, I could have. At the same time, I don't think, and I'll just throw this out to you. I don't think you guys understand a lot of things that are going on with this.
I'll never understand football.
But the risk was 25 yards. It wasn't like a fake punt. Yeah. If they kick the ball out of the end and they get the ball at the 25, they got the ball at the 50.
So you didn't have a big problem.
It was a 25-yard. No, did not have a problem with the call whatsoever. Frankie will just tell you, he goes, didn't execute the kick, anything like we should. Had the exact look we want, had him bail out from there. So I say like that. I can tell the vibe in the room is that cost us the game, and you guys are dead wrong.
Well, that's why he's here, Bill Bush. Yeah. I don't think it cost you the game. I just thought it was something I hadn't seen in a while.
Yeah. Have you never seen a surprise onside kick before?
Not up
in the Super.
I was going to say in the Super Bowl.
Super Bowl, they kicked one and won the
yeah.
game for him. Oh, that's
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
it's just a question.
Yeah. Sometimes you have to have some real ones. You got to have some guts to call some stuff. Sometimes they don't always quite work out exactly where they were, but it would have been a brilliant call if he gets it, goes down and scores, does this. So I'm in no way ever going to be on Coach Frost for making that call. Absolutely not.
I admire that answer.
Looking at this year's roster, it was interesting because we were kind of excited. We were going to have a quarterback battle for the first time in a while. And at the end of spring ball, I'm going to make an assumption, total assumption. You may know more than I do. It was probably laid out that Jeff Sims is probably going to be the starter. You're more than welcome to come to camp with the right to compete for that job. But right now, what we've seen and what we want to do, it's going to be Jeff. Casey decides to transfer. What are your thoughts with the quarterback position? You know Chuba pretty well, and Heinrich Harburg. You know their tendencies, their style, their attitude, the effort they give, etc., and the abilities that they have. What are your thoughts in that quarterback room?
Well, again, since I wasn't on with him this year, this spring, and so it's a new staff, so people change like crazy. You have to go back and look at just like when I recruited Joe Burrow at SHU. Had one meaningful snap. There was the only time he was ever in the game. I think the minimum they were up was 40 when he went in the game, and he had probably a total of maybe 20 or 30 snaps in his career. So nothing but backup snaps that he had during that time. I just knew they had something about him. So things changed like crazy, which means I imagine that Chuba also had a great spring after he got back to healthy to try to have. Mm-hmm. So I always put in there that they got really good coaches here. And then they were able to do it, see him be able to see what he can get done, have that happen, and he'll be much improved. I love Chubb. He's very competitive. He's got a big spirit. He's got a lot of energy to him, so I really enjoy him. Jeff Sims, I've met him one time and talked to him. Really enjoyed that. I don't know him at all, and so if you look at it, you would say physically he's done a lot of great things. Obviously, he did a great job when he came in here of taking care of his business to be able to have that. And then how it worked out, with Casey. Casey was injured. He got a shoulder surgery, really was just learning the offense, but was not executing anything during the spring with him. And I think he felt like the number one thing he had to do was to be on the field kind of almost guaranteed. And no one makes a guarantee, but I think he'll probably will be the starter, obviously, because he went to a coach at Florida Atlantic that he's played for before. So he had something that's like, boy, that looks, and I'm sure he sat there. But to say that I talked to Casey about that, I was hoping Casey would stay because I really enjoyed him. Because what I enjoyed the most about Casey is that he's a tough sucker.
He got hit.
I saw him. I saw him battle through things, and so I really enjoyed his toughness.
That Rutgers game,
he really enjoyed it.
He kept getting up. I mean, he was really, really impressive.
Yeah. Obviously, one of the things that you see in a player is toughness, because Joe Burrow is exactly the same way. I mean, he got sacked like 471 times 2 years ago.
Yeah,
it was insane, and he just kept getting up.
Yeah. So for that reason, I'd like to have seen it. But I would say this: the staff here understands very well. Coach Satterfield understands quarterback play extremely well, and so does the head coach, Coach Rule. So what they saw must have been really good, which is very encouraging for Nebraska.
You mentioned Joe Burrow. You recruited him to LSU. Where does that year rank as far as your watching of a quarterback during a season?
Yeah, I've never seen anything that special before. Obviously, he won the Heisman. I to this day, I think he's the highest number of points ever. As far as as they got almost every first place vote there was, but he was just, Joe's a dude. He's a man's man, and so it's not just really super talented. He's also that tough. He's incredible. I mean, he got knocked unconscious at the Fiesta Bowl on a pick six on he gets lit up on what would have been a penalty. Now it wouldn't have been called, and he came back then threw about 5 touchdowns in a row, type of thing. He's that kind of a player, and we had a lot of guys around him. But
Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase were pretty special.
At that, and Clyde Edwards-Helaire was special at that, and Terrence Marshall was the second rounder.
Is that the most talented team you've ever coached?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it was. Someone sent me Derek Panansky sent me a text the other day, and it talked through the teams that we beat. It was like we beat number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, and 10 or something that year, and the margin of victory was 22 points.
No.
So it was but we were really good on defense. My safety won the Thorpe Award, Grant Delpit, and we had a really good defense, and our offense was ridiculous. But every day, I mean, we won against them every day in 7-on-7 and different team stuff. So we went good on good. It was a nightmare. I mean, it was a nightmare to defend them, like that. I mean, it was, again, the running backs, the first rounder, Joe's first picked in the draft, wide receivers, there was 3 of them that were out there, 2 first rounders and 1 second rounder.
Wow.
So every day it was just like, so you were prepared when you got to the game.
Yep.
You'd seen that stuff.
Can you stick around for another break?
Sure. Yeah, sure.
I don't want to keep you too long.
How
You
long?
gotta go.
Yeah. What time we got to?
10 minutes.
Sure, I can do that. Absolutely.
Awesome. Bill Bush. Sorry about the comment. I didn't mean to offend you on the onside.
You didn't offend me one bit. Like I said, that's what talk radio is about.
No, I
didn't
liked
offend me a bit.
I liked it. Back with more. Bill Bush, former Nebraska assistant coach, and on early break with Sip and Jake. Back with more after this.
When you were a kid, clubs were cool. Robotics club, or space club, and stuff like that. But what do adults get? Book clubs and quilting clubs? No, forget that. How about a margarita club? Get to Upside Bar and Lounge and join the best club in town. 10 flavors of margaritas like Maui Wowie, burnt pineapple, and mango tango. Try all 10 of them and receive a margarita glass. Make it your new Monday night edition. $4 margaritas and $4 taco baskets. Grab the crew and head on over. Monday nights or any night. Upside Bar and Lounge at 29th and Pine Lake.
When it comes to making plans, you are the best. What about those road trips, which are perfect on your way there and perfect on your way back? Or those meetings with friends, surprise parties, camps, birthdays. The same way you plan for the important moments, start planning to protect you and your loved ones from a natural disaster. Sign up for local weather emergency alerts. Prepare an emergency kit and make a family communications plan. Get started at ready.gov/plan.
Brought to you by FEMA and the Ad Council.
Animal Hospital in Lincoln, it's not professional care that sets them apart, but their warm staff and state-of-the-art facilities. Whether it's for a routine checkup or a comprehensive medical procedure, at Parkview, your pet isn't just another number, but a valued member of their caring family. Visit them at pahlincoln.com today and in person just south of 14th and Pine Lake Road. Parkview Animal Hospital, your pet, our passion. For happier, healthier furry friends.
This is Sunday Rewind on 37 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
Welcome back to Husker Rewind here on 93.7 The Ticket, theticketfm.com. I'm Mike Melbye. That is Tom Stevens, and in studio with us is former Nebraska assistant Bush. She is on early break with Sip and Jake, and are they going to add your name into the title?
No, they don't. They refuse to. They refuse to. I've asked several times, and Jake will not add it on. That's not true at all. No. It's early break with Sip and Jake. I'm just a fill-in guy that stops by the office here and gets on the radio with them. Those two guys have spent over 8 years building an unbelievable product, just like you guys have too, and they've just done a great job right there. That it's the morning. It's the morning drive show that gets a lot of attention. It's because of those two, because of Steve Sipple and Jake Sorensen. That's why the whole reason clicks.
It absolutely is. If you're watching on the Starter Heyman live stream, greatly appreciate it. Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch, plus Allo Channel 951 if you want to join the show. 402-464-5685 on the Honda of Lincoln hotline and Starter Heyman text line.
I want to ask about Eric Gilbert because you coached him at LSU. I think the highest ranked tight end in the last decade.
Yes, he was the National Gatorade Player of the Year, the Player of the Year overall, and at tight end. And coaching him was a lot of fun. Everything came very natural. Now I only had him on special team drills, so I was on defense.
We just
unbelievable. So everything had to do it. I would teach him like that. Arik, here's what we're going to do. We're going to do this. Boom, boom, boom. And he could do it. And he could get off of blocks. He could do all the things. He was so natural, very coachable, very likable, somewhat quiet. I mean, just as someone that came in as the player of the year type of situation, he could have been a lot more like big eyes, big chest. Look at me. He wasn't like that at all. I really enjoyed him. I'm sure Coach Rule will do a great job with him. I think they're still waiting to see if he's got his.
He needs to be cleared by the NCAA, and every day goes by, it looks like maybe he won't, but you never know.
Yeah, you never know with that. Like I said, it was set up for a one-time transfer, and there's a two-time transfer, and there's some things you have to go through. And so, like I said, I just hope whatever it needs to happen for things to work out well for him, I hope that they do. He's a great young man.
You were known as a great recruiter. What are the challenges as you see it going forward for Matt Rule recruiting Nebraska?
Well, one of the things that is hard, but you just have to you just want to make everything you're positive the way you can do and control what you can control. The hardest thing that I've had from other places is to be able to see people live and to get them on your campus numerous times. So if you're trying to get somebody here from California, and it might be, did you see him practice? Did you see him play? Did you see him for several years? Has he been on your campus 6 or 7 times? I just saw a young man, a very good corner, committed to Florida State, and I read the article on him this morning, and it was like, he's like, yeah, it was just like it was at LSU. He goes, I've just been there so many times. So you got to know more about him. That's where the problem hits sometimes is, what do you know about someone when you don't have them on campus numerous times? And at LSU, we didn't bring anyone on campus, but we did the early time in that May-June period, then no one during the season because we didn't get to spend enough time with them. But those players all came. We recruited such a footprint that was close that they could get on campus. So we were seeing them all the time. And the next thing, and I'm sure they're striving very hard to do that here, is that I was told from the first day I walked in, hey, if he doesn't come to camp, he doesn't get to come to LSU. So you had to come to camp and you had to perform live. We had to coach you.
It's a huge difference. Just
a huge difference.
And
exactly. So you like him on film. You like all the things you see. How coachable was it? And sometimes you're like, ooh, that guy's better than what we thought. Or we thought he was just okay. Yeah. And we coached him. He's way better. We thought he was in everything and be like, oh, man, I didn't like his personality out there on the field. I didn't. Yeah. He got tired. Because at LSU, when you had the offense-defense periods right there, offensive defensive line one-on-ones and stuff, the offensive players for LSU were there and the defensive D-line were all there. Yeah. They were the ones right in the middle of it. So it was heated. They were getting after him to get going, one-on-ones with the DBs and wide receivers. All those guys that had played at LSU had been All-Americans and all the different people, the Stingleys and all that, they're all standing there and they're watching them go one-on-one. So you get to find out in front of people because some people are like, watch this. Or I used to say this one time, we had a really good player come to he was already committed to us at LSU. He was a 5-star out of Dallas, and I was the one recruiting him. He's a great young man. He comes to camp in we go to Tulane. We're at a camp, and it was on Sunday of Memorial Day weekend. And he went to our camps, but he was there, and he came with his quarterback. He goes, "No, I'm not doing this camp. I'll be at your camp and do all that stuff like that." I remember giving him a hard time, like, "Oh, you must just be afraid to run. They'd be afraid to get a timer on me." He looks around, goes and borrows a pair of shoes, walks over electronically, runs forward, just grabbed a pair of shoes and put them on. He kind of looked at me like, "There you go.
There's your 4-4."
I go, that's the kind of guy, because you know what? Fast guys like to run. If you're not fast, they're the ones that are going like, "Yeah, I'm not going to run. I'm not going to do that," because the guy or the guys that can jump 39 inches, guess what they do? They jump.
I heard Matt Rule made that comment earlier. I mean, he was talking about track guys and why you were recruiting some of these 2- and 3-star guys. And he said, if I can't coach a guy that runs a 4.3 and that athletic, then I'm not a good coach. What do you make of that?
He's 100% right. And also, I love when someone says, I get my 40 back down to 4.4. I'm like, has it ever been close to 4.4? Back down. What are you talking about? Back down. Yeah. I've never had anyone at my juncture of college coaching where it's like, comes in, it's like, I don't know if he's fast enough. Then 2 years later, it's like, oh yeah, he's the fastest guy on the team. He's not. The fastest guy on the team show up the first day of camp. And they're like, that he's one of the fastest guys on the team right now, and he will be in 4 years. Yeah. That's just something that now, can you change some bodies? Y'all see some guys come in at 6'5", 215, and all of a sudden be 265. And I've seen that happen a lot, but I haven't seen all of a sudden where it's just, nor have I seen a guy that ran high school track and was at 10,500 meters, then all of a sudden can't run in college. Just can't run. He's not hurt either. He just can't run. Nope, they can still run.
My fastest 40 time ever was a 4.7, and I did it in like 28 yards.
Perfect.
Yeah. I want to ask you something. You mentioned about the camps. If you don't come to LSU's camp, you're not playing at LSU. Matt Rule's offering guys based on very little film study. They're in front of him. They're running. They're jumping. They're doing everything that he needs them to do. They're demonstrating their athletic ability. And there's people that are like, nobody does this. This will never work, etc. I'm sure somebody does stuff like this somewhere. You ever seen a coach go about recruiting people that just literally not a ton of info on them? They get in front of you and you go, here's your offer.
Sure, and I'm sure they have a lot of background information, all those different things, and they have some ways to probably. I've always said, someone says, "Are they competitive?" Well, how do you figure it out they're competitive? First of all, the number one thing is, are they multiple sport? Because if you're highly competitive, highly talented, you want to compete. So you don't just like or those that don't play both ways. And all of a sudden, it's like, hold it. Now you're playing at one. You're one of the best running backs in the country. You don't play any defense, or you're the best defensive player. You play no offense. That happens some places. But then they also have that. Do they play point guard on the basketball team? Are they whatever? Do they play? Are they running track? I love guys that wrestle because that's a man sport to go out there by yourself, but with no team around you. So all those things add up. So I'm sure they have a great feel for those things, and I'm sure they have other ways to get eyes on them to be like, hey, they see him in the spring, they see him work out, or a lot of times, when we used to go out in the spring at LSU, we were one of the ones. I can remember it was myself and it was a coach from Georgia, and then there was another couple coaches. I won't mention who they were, but they were elite schools. Yeah. And they're like, "Oh, are you one of those guys? You're going to be filming everything?" And I'm like, "Yep," because you had to film everything, and then I sent it back in that night. Yeah. And so when we would sit around in May, when we came back off the road and we start watching recruits and be like, okay, Bill, tell me about so-and-so, go them all the information. Then they'd pull up film from 2 weeks ago where I was filming him on the practice field, running, doing drills, something. The point being, and sometimes it'd be in the weight room, whatever it was, we were finding out information. Yeah. That at all times, finding out information of what do we see, how can we stand on this thing, what can we do, and sometimes you'll watch and go, oh yeah, that backs it up like that. But guess what? It was still, you better get him to camp. That was still the deal.
Best guy you ever recruited. Best guy you've ever recruited.
Best guy or most talented?
Most talented.
I don't know what that would.
Did that guy pan out? That was talented.
Probably one of the most talented that I ever recruited was probably. And there are so many of them because I've been lucky to have guys go. Like I said, win the Heisman and stuff. But Maurice Alexander out of Utah State was one. He was ended up being a 3rd round draft pick to the Rams, and he when I went to Iowa Western to Arizona Western, it was like I walked in, I had a different logo on, small school logo, Utah State, and I'm like, who's your best player? No one's recruiting. They're like, that guy right there is an SEC player, and no one will talk to him because he's playing middle linebacker and he weighs 185 or 190. He's from East St. Louis, and he was a 100-meter champion. He was a wrestler. I think he was a state champion wrestler. And his film, and you talk to everybody like, oh yeah, he's really good. Are you guys? I remember being there with USC, and I'm like, are you guys listening there? Oh no, it's too small. Not messing with him. He had 2 offers. It was Utah State, New Mexico State. That was it. And he obviously came to Utah State with me, and then being a 3rd round draft pick, I think he had 7 years in the league. So it probably more just because of the story behind it, type of thing. But it was like this guy was such a player. So he'd have been a All-American or great player anywhere he went to. He'd have started at USC. He'd have started at Alabama. He'd have started at Georgia, every place. And he's just sitting there. And in Arizona Western also, highly recruited school. Wow. Everyone came in there. Yeah. So it wasn't like one of those deals where it's like, well, no one knew about him. They're like, coach would say, hey, just so you know, this guy here is really good. They're like, thanks. And just keep right on walking. And so we get a moment like that when you get someone that does that. That was just so far down the line, and he had to do some work academically, but got it all done. And then he was just, you had to tell him, whoa, not go every day. It was just slow down.
Love those stories. Could have you in all day. I don't want to keep you too long. Thanks for stopping by. Love your show.
Absolutely. Appreciate you. That's very, very kind of you. I appreciate, I said the U.S. could have gotten 10 people to come in here today. So getting a hold of me was outstanding.
Well,
so I appreciate
it. Foreman, you guys are awesome to come in studio, and we'd love to have you back maybe during the season.
That'd be awesome. I'd love to come back. This show's incredible, and Jay's probably I dealt hard. we delved in hard to camp, what it's like with NFL camp starting, what it was like when he was starting camp, because camp's just getting started on the last 2 days. So we had great insight on that. And Jay is a great human. He's a brilliant football player, and he's really good at how we can talk about what's going on from a player's perspective and how he does things. So awesome situation.
Thanks again, Bill. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Mike Melbye there. Tom Stevens here, back with more. It's Husker Rewind every Sunday, 5 to 7. More after this.
When you were a kid, clubs were cool. Robotics, space club, stuff like what do adults get? Book clubs and quilting? No, forget about margarita club. Get to Upside Bar and Lounge. No. 10 flavors of margarita, like Maui Wow, burnt pineapple, and mango tango. Try all 10 of them and receive your own souvenir margarita glass. Make it your new Monday night tradition. $4 margarita, grab the crew, and head on over. Monday nights or any night. Upside Bar and Lounge at 29th and Pine Lake.
A smoke-free environment is the only way to fully protect from the dangers of secondhand smoke. That's why smoke-free policies are so important to me. Whether it's in my car, apartment building, or when I'm dining outdoors, there's no place for secondhand smoke or e-cigarette aerosol. Breathe easier knowing the facts. Visit smokefree.ne.gov. Paid for by Tobacco Free Nebraska. Aired with the Nebraska Broadcasters Association and this station.
Serve Nebraska believers are part of what makes Nebraska great. Each year, the Step Forward Awards honors volunteers across the state who serve their communities standing ways. We hope you'll join us this year at the Step Forward Awards luncheon on October 27th in Omaha. Help us thank volunteers with a celebration to remember. To register, visit serve.nebraska.gov and click Register Now. We hope to see you there. Paid for by Serve Nebraska. Aired with the Nebraska Broadcasters Association and this station.
This is Sunday Rewind.
Take it back now, y'all.
Hang down, flip it and reverse it.
On 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com. Now, here are your hosts, Tom Stevens and Mike Melbye.
Welcome back. Hour number 2. Tom Stevens, Mike Melbye, Jay Foreman, and Bill Bush talking in the hallway. What a treat to have Bill Bush on the show. And now we get another treat. The Hall of Famer is back. Mr. Foreman about to sit down, but that was a fun hour, huh, Mike?
It was. And the best part is the stories that we heard off air. So
can you imagine coaching that team at LSU? I mean, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, Joe Burrow alone. Those three alone. What an incredible year.
Well, yeah, and as he was telling the story about, that team and the 7-on-7 and the 1-on-1s during the week and how difficult it was, you just have flashbacks to being a fan of it. The 95 Nebraska team, the 94 Nebraska team, when you hear the Jason Peters and the Christian Peters and the Grant Wistroms talking about the fact that game days were cake. Those were easy, man, because practices were just insane. And so, that was.
Can you believe Nebraska turned down Joe Burrow not once but twice?
I can, because I was here. I was reading stories about it. I know it happened.
Well, I'm happy for Bill Burrow. I mean, because I think, let's face it, if Joe Burrow comes to Nebraska, maybe they get 8 wins, maybe they get 9 wins. They're not going to win the national title with the players they had at Nebraska. They're going to win the national title with him. I never saw it from Joe Burrow. He was the Ohio Player of the Year. Of course, his dad played here. And he was recruited by Bo Pelini. We should have recruited him very hard and didn't. And then Scott Frost probably should have recruited him harder, but then they had Adrian Martinez here. So you kind of understand why they didn't a little bit. And I don't know that anybody thought that Joe Burrow was going to be as good as Joe Burrow is.
No, I mean, now one guy that did is Bill Bush,
but he's a pretty good talent evaluator and recruiter.
Well, that's the whole thing. He's like, I knew what I was getting. I there was an it factor that you and I and other fans would never see and never hear about. So, it's, I don't know. And the thing is, in the situation, and not just talent wise, but like in the situation, like Jeff Sims at Georgia Tech, the one thing that somebody brought up is that, guess what? He's never played on a winning team either, because his entire time at Georgia Tech, they never had a winning record.
that's a good place to start. Maybe we can bring in Jay Foreman here once he's done talking to Bill Bush. And I understand why you would talk to him all day long. He's great. But Jeff Sims was one of the faces, one of three faces at Big Ten Media Days. Ethan Piper was there, offensive lineman, and Luke Reimer was there as well, middle linebacker. But Jeff Sims was impressive. I mean, we don't know Jeff Sims still very well, other than speaking a couple of times in the spring. But I love the story of Jeff Sims having to learn each and everybody's name on this roster and then going to their locker because their locker has a picture of them and then their name. There's 150 guys on this team, and he's learning everybody's name in a very short amount of time. And I think already he's become a pretty good leader.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with that. And that story to me was very telling about like, what do you need or expect out of a leader? The guy that's, maybe going to be a captain or that's going to, be your starting quarterback, et cetera. The one thing I took away from Big Ten Media Days, I was ultimately disappointed with, is Luke Reimer cut his hair. I have an affinity for longer hair. I was very disappointed that he cut his hair.
Yeah, you're like Thor. I mean, you'd lose all your powers without your hair.
Exactly.
You've got a lot of it. You could donate hair.
It was not Thor. What was it? What's the Greek god that had the hair? Was he what
the Greek god of hair? Joe Namath. I don't know. Remember?
Joe Namath.
I think Joe Namath. We were talking about Jeff Sims and learning all the names. It's not as big of a responsibility when you're a linebacker as a quarterback, probably. But did you go through that as well? I mean, Jeff Sims said he had to go to the locker and try to remember everybody's name, and he can't just say, "Hey, bud." He's got to know the guy's name, even if he's a walk-on, if he really wants to be a leader. Did some of the quarterbacks at Nebraska go through that as well? Do you remember that being a problem?
No, I mean we didn't have guys, coming and going as much.
Exactly.
So you kind of knew each other. It takes a little while.
That's
but
right.
I
The
respect
transfer
him for
portal wasn't a big thing then. It wasn't a
There's
thing.
39 new guys. 39. So I respect his effort, and he's one of the new guys.
Yeah.
So he's got to learn the guys that are already here and some of the new guys that are coming and have came after. So I respect him for trying and trying to get it. He won't. I mean, look, at the end of the day, the guy that you're out there rolling, you got to know him.
That's more of an NFL thing, right?
Yeah.
Because you were on a different roster a lot of times every year. In some
I
cases.
was fortunate. My first 7, I was good.
Yeah.
The last 2, boy, they was trying to wonder what, once them numbers get up in the 90s, you're about to be about the league.
Yeah.
Because
Buffalo, you knew the guys, right?
Yeah, yeah. But I will tell you, you want to hear a funny story?
Yeah, I do.
Okay,
absolutely.
all right. So one of my, I was fortunate enough to go to Buffalo, right? Now, granted, I was mad I got drafted later than I thought I should. If I didn't go, I was realistic though.
Yeah.
I saw a lot of scrubs go before me, and that just happened. So I get dumb luck, go to Buffalo, and I was fortunate. John Holisek and Sam Cowart was there. Both of them took me under their wing, and I remember John giving me a ride back from mini camp. He told me a story. This is funny. So about Cornelius Bennett when he was there.
Yeah.
And this is when they played a preseason game in Toronto, I think. So you'd have to go back and look. So John was a 5th-round pick like myself. So maybe he had that, kind of connection with me. And they were at not a bar, but maybe the hotel bar or something like that. And John from the south side of Chicago, and he was yoked up, right?
Yeah.
So I guess they get to the bar, and John had already been on the team a year, and so they're playing the next preseason. They're right next to each other.
Yeah.
They both got a drink. Cornelius, hey man, how you doing? What's your name?
Oh no!
Didn't even know who he was. And
no!
Yeah, you know what I mean. That's so.
Yeah.
Some guys try, some guys don't. Cornelius is great, but when John told me, it was funny though, because I was all, when you get there, you ask, how's Bruce? How's Cornelius? I grew up watching those guys.
Right, sure.
So then, they have different stories.
Yeah. He's the Hall of Famer. Former Nebraska Hall of Famer Jay Foreman joins us. Of course, the big story of the week, Bob Wager resigns. That apparently happened Tuesday morning, Wednesday morning, 1:30 in the morning. And he's in, he's out. $300,000 later, he's gone, out of a job. Was this the right decision by Nebraska, you think, to pull the trigger so early without maybe an investigation? It doesn't look good on the part of Wager, and obviously he's done. But is that the right way to go?
Well, then I think he resigned. Look, man, it's a tough situation.
Yeah.
I mean, he ain't getting no $300,000. He only been here a couple months. I don't even know if the ink's dry on the crib. So I mean, first of all, it's unfortunate for him if there's any like real issues, or it's just a kind of one-off that you get, busted for, doing something that you shouldn't be doing. I'm sure he has a lot of regret. I think, I can't speak for anybody or anything like that. I think the dynamics of some prior stuff probably made the university have a hard line, and rightfully so. And you're trying to hold adults accountable and stuff, and I get it. I mean, I've seen where coaches only, they kind of gotta, get suspended for a while. I mean, in the NFL, I think the GM at the Cardinals, he was like 6 weeks he was gone, right? I mean, I've seen different ways. But it is what it is. But the one
and
thing,
when you're trying to build a culture too, I mean,
Sure.
how can you hold players responsible if you're not going to, hold?
Well, there's two ways to look at it. One, you make a mistake, you're gone. Okay. When I was 18 years old, I made a lot of mistakes.
Sure.
Okay. And I got T.O. tightened me up real quick.
Wager's 52 though.
Well, I'm just saying.
Yeah.
I mean, it's both ways.
Yeah.
If you're gonna kind of teeter-totter and make, show guys that, Nick Saban had a real good quote unquote rant about this. What do you expect me to do? Throw a kid away? Now he's not getting the education. Maybe I have him sit out 6 to 8 weeks, prove he wants to get back, give him another chance, make it a little bit tighter.
Yeah.
And then he's on like a thin ice. Or now you could do that possibly with a coach, but we've seen the Keith Williams situation. It's happened before.
And maybe if Rule's in his 5th, 6th year or something like that, like a Saban,
sure,
he might give a coach another chance.
I think the timing was bad too, right before the season, where you want somebody to be locked in. You want people locked in on what they need to do, and so you got to respect the university's decision and his decision. It definitely sucks for everybody. It sucks for him. How easily, it's not just him. It's him, his family, his kids, first and foremost. I mean, obviously, then also the kids that he's recruited on the roster right now because they trusted him to be the coach, the kids that he's recruited, and then the kids that he's probably recruited in, say, the 2025. But what they were lucky enough to do, which is weird, that the analyst has more experience than him, 7 years coaching at the FBS level. If that ain't a fallback plan, I don't know what it is.
We said that in hour number 1. If you look at the 2 resumes, you probably would have picked Josh Martin.
Yeah.
I mean,
but it's a difference though.
Yeah.
High school coaches in Texas get paid.
Yep.
And if you're going to dig me up out of Texas, it's got to be worth my time. And plus, he was a good recruiter, great inroads, but unfortunately, it didn't work out.
Thanks to everybody for watching on the Sutter Heyman live stream. You can watch the live stream on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter, as well as Allo Channel 951. If you want to be a part of the show, call or text 402-464-5685, the Honda of Lincoln hotline, and the Sutter Heyman text line. Crowbait says, hey, Jay.
What's up, Crowbait?
Hey, one thing I want to do before we get too much further is congratulate you on 2 new shows that are coming to 93.7 The Ticket, the Jay Foreman postgame show, and then you and your dad are going to spend an hour.
Once a week. Yeah, I don't know how. Hey, they say you never want to work with family. Listen, I'm usually cool, calm, and collective, but there's one person that can get me bent out of shape real quick is my dad. No, but he's great.
It's going to turn into paper listen.
You know what it probably will be, because my dad's really good on the radio and TV. He's got a ton of knowledge about football, a ton of stories. He's real close in there with the Vikings. He does his own stuff up there, so I'm excited for it because there's a big Viking fan base down here.
Well, me, I'm the biggest Viking fan alive, and Chuck Foreman was one of my heroes growing up. I couldn't wait to get home from church to turn on the Vikings game. Usually was at noon.
Yeah.
It was either the Bears, the Lions, or the Packers, or whatever. And Chuck was instant entertainment. And he was one of those few backs that they actually threw the ball to early on. Fran Tarkington and he had a great chemistry, not just running the football, but he was, I think, a couple of years like one of the leading receivers in the NFL.
Yeah, he was the first. Now that's what people don't say. He was the first. He was well before Roger Craig. The West Coast offense started with Jerry Burns in them.
Yeah.
So he led the league in receiving and rushing one year, and just up until LaDainian Tomlinson, my dad was the fastest to 50 touchdowns, in less games because they only played 12 games. LaDainian just broke his record when he was whenever he hit 50. But look, man, it's it's good for him, and I think look, man, your dad's getting older. It's good to connect with him.
And invented the spin move. He invented the spin move that everybody uses today. He would set a guy up, spin right around
He
him.
had to spin. He had to spin with a little bit of dead leg. People don't realize my dad was 6'3", 225.
And a great athlete outside of football.
world-class athlete. Went to the pre-Olympic trials in the 300 with IM hurdles or something. Basketball. He was a defensive end and defensive tackle and tight end in high school. Went down to Miami as kind of a defensive where they just put you wherever. Some injuries happened. He was a receiver, tight end, and they threw him in there at like a wing back. And next thing you know, the rest is history. So it's pretty cool how
who did he run around with? Who did he hang out with on the Vikings roster?
I mean, they're all
Fran?
pretty tight.
Still,
no, nobody's close with Fran.
What is Fran just a snot?
No comment. Yeah. I mean, I haven't came across him, but I go to those guys have been knowing me since they've changed my diaper. Jim Marshall and Alan Page and those guys and Carl Eller, unfortunately, have changed my diaper. So I've been knowing them since I was a kid, right? And
those teams should have won a championship.
They did. And we'll talk to my dad about it. He'll get pretty frank about what the change was.
Well, here's my explanation. They always played the best teams in the history of football. They played the Raiders with Stabler. They played the Steel Curtain.
And they played the Dolphins.
They played the undefeated Dolphins.
But one team, the best team he said he was on, he said for all those teams, he said the best team, talent, prime, the way they played was the game that Drew Pearson got the offensive pass interference that wasn't called at home.
75?
Yeah.
He
said that was the best.
push-off.
Yeah, that was
a push-off, and it was a Hail Mary. Staubach just heaves it to the end zone.
At home, though. How do you not get that call at home? Well, I wonder, you know what? We should track down that ref. Where is he? You know how they used to do this?
Is Paul Krause still alive?
Hold on. Yeah.
Okay.
You know how they used to do the where are they now?
Yeah.
With the NFL thing? We need to find out where that dude is.
It was the worst call.
And see and watch it and see what go and see what he
That team would have played the Broncos, and they would have.
Yeah.
Craig Morton was 200 years old. They would have won that game going away.
Do I need to excuse myself because I am a diehard Cowboys fan?
Oh, you are?
Yeah.
I knew there was something wrong with
you
it.
cheated.
Yeah, there's a lot.
I knew there was something wrong with it.
It's not a little. There's a lot wrong with it.
He likes
No.
Texas.
I grew up though.
Yeah.
1 year that I lived down there, but it was my third grade year, very formative years, and my very first NFL game, Dallas Cowboys, Green Bay Packers. Very first baseball game, Texas Rangers, Chicago White Sox.
Ooh.
The Mavericks and the Stars were not down there yet,
Yeah.
so I've got different NFL and NBA teams.
Mm-hmm.
But man, that was it for me.
Yeah.
I already had figured out Nebraska football because
Right.
we moved from Waverly to Texas and then back to Waverly a year
Right.
later. But man, I was hooked. Ed Too Tall Jones,
Yeah.
Randy White,
Yeah.
Roger Staubach.
They were gifted.
Yeah.
And they didn't. What they win two? Staubach wins
Two,
one.
yeah, he won two.
Staubach
Yep.
won two. Before we get to break, I do want to talk about Big Ten Media Days and the ultimate vibe, the overall
Sure.
vibe for you. You were there.
Yeah.
What'd you think?
It was interesting. As far as Nebraska, I was more than pleased, for Nebraska. I mean, Matt Rule, did his thing.
Man.
It was very commendable. He gave like a quick, Cliff Notes version of the program. He highlighted the three players, answered questions, worked the room. It was important to him. It was genuine.
Yeah.
The three players that he brought, I think, were very unique and telling. I always judge a new coach, before we get into wins and losses, by the holdover players and what they say and how they move along with their coach.
Yeah.
And that would be Luke Reimer and Ethan Piper. Two different types of careers right now,
Mhm.
right? And they both are, all in on Matt Rule, and then Jeff Sims did his thing. I felt like Nebraska was an A+. The only thing that was a little unique was when we were here's what's funny. I was Daryl Thompson. I grew up with Daryl Thompson, right, in Minnesota. So I had him on and Barry Alvarez next to me.
Great running back.
Right.
Yeah.
For the Gophers, played at Wisconsin,
Mhm.
first round pick. So we were asking him, it was good to get the old school version of Barry Alvarez, kind of the administrator, ask him about Luke Fickell, and then ask Daryl Thompson about PJ Fleck and how they can get over that 8, 9, 10 West threshold. I checked my text in between break. Then the PJ Fleck news or the Minnesota news breaks. That was a little odd. Nothing really is true about it. And then the Jim Harbaugh, how Michigan, they were the last team up there, probably because of the Big Ten champs. But it was almost like he was in and out. His players did a really good job.
Yeah.
and they seem to be inspired by any type of disciplinary action that comes towards his way.
You mentioned PJ Fleck. You're not buying it.
Well, I mean,
Bill Busch is not a fan of or a believer that this is all anything.
No, it's not. It's very embellished. I've been on pro teams. When we walked in, and Joe Marciano was one of the greatest special teams coach out there. When we walk in, we clap. Two clap at the end of it. That's what it was. That's not a cult thing or anything like that. And the whole Fleck bank and all that. Heck, I wish I had a little Osborne bank. I could get in some more trouble. Osborne. My bank was empty when he said, "Do I got called Chuck Foreman?" I was like, "Listen, you ain't never gonna see me again unless we winning."
But that's the era that we're in. It seems like that if you yell at a kid, or maybe you clap a couple of times too many, or you make them, work a little harder, and
more than they want to.
One of the allegations was they were using punishment, exercise as a punishment, or lifting, or whatever.
Yeah, and so I mean, what else are you supposed to do?
Well, I think that.
Will you please stop breaking rules? I mean, does that work? I mean, those type of kids. I mean, this is not to minimize Northwestern or any type of truly over the board hazing, right? Like, so if I'm late to a class and you run me so much that I have told I got to go to the hospital, okay, that might be excessive. But if it's something known and then I continue to do it, I don't really understand the problem, because those players are the same ones that when it gets 4th and 1, or you need to stop. Yeah. Or you need to be disciplined for 60 minutes, right? Yeah. Those are the players you can't count on. There's not one. This is what those type of players don't understand. Tell me a great player or a good player that doesn't work hard and play and follow the rules. Just name me one.
Yeah. And these accusations, it feels like, always get laid against a Northwestern or a Minnesota. It never happens, it feels like, to Nick Saban. And that he goes back a long way coaching college football and in the NFL.
I'm sure it has, but
it's because he wins. I mean, to a certain extent, right? The Kirk Ferentz thing kind of went away because he won.
Yeah.
And winning does matter. I mean, it's easy to say.
Northwestern would be like, well, I don't know. If it might be a little different right now if they're winning. With Alabama, look at Georgia. I mean, when you're talking, I don't really want to even compare Bob Wagner in Georgia. I mean, Georgia has issues with guys that aren't even of age to be drinking and driving. Yeah. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yep.
In their program, you don't hear anything about it. They have, like, I guess, domestic. I don't know what the right term is, and I'm not a polished, what they got a lot of issues in their program. I'm sure there's stuff with Nick Saban. Nick Saban's is a hard line, dude. Yeah. He's de-starring you as soon as you get there.
Yeah, that's true.
If you don't want to work hard and do all that stuff, it's probably not. Football's just not for some people. It's just past high school. It's just not.
Yeah. The stuff that you read about what was going on up in Minnesota with PJ Fleck, it's interesting because the stuff that I read from former players said his system, his way, isn't for everybody.
It's not.
And it sounds to me like there's a couple of players that it wasn't for, that put up with it and just decided to, find a not overly popular website or whatever.
Professor, right?
Yeah. And then I want to equate this then to Matt Rule and what we've heard him say about how he recruits. Hey, Jay Foreman, do you want to come play at Nebraska? Here's what we need to do. And here's what they do. And Matt Rule said it 100 times. This is the way we do things. It's not for everybody. This is how hard you have to work. If it's not for you, we wish you the best of luck.
Right.
If it is, let's talk.
Yeah, it's not.
It sounds a lot like what PJ Fleck is doing. I don't like the guy personally. It's just, he's just, I don't know, not my kind of guy that I'd want to hang out with. He's fun to root against, I guess.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm like, he's kind of doing exactly what Nebraska's head coach is doing, in the fact that he's telling them, hey, this may not be for you.
Yeah, I think when you have a big personality like he does, and you're in your face with all this stuff, and up inside, you set yourself up probably for more.
He rubs people probably the wrong way.
He wears on you, and so does Jim Harbaugh.
Yeah,
right. Jim Harbaugh wears it everywhere he's been. He's wearing. Look, Darren Nelson was assistant athletic director at Stanford. He told me that dude wears you out, but they win, or he wins. It's just how much you're going to deal with. Here's a quick example of, is it for you or not? Late in my career, I went to the Giants, and I heard about Tom Coughlin. So Of course, I'm gonna accept the job.
And it was true, wasn't it?
I'm
By Tom Coughlin.
gonna accept the job, right? I mean, they need me to come in and help.
Sure.
The meeting started at 7:00. I will never forget this. I was in there at 6:54, and you would have thought I was late, right?
Yeah.
Michael Strahan came over and was just like, dude, just let it go on in there. But here's what I respect about Tom Coughlin, right? If you're a veteran and you handle your business and you work hard, you show up and you play well, you won't have I'm telling you.
Yeah.
He's like the happy-go-lucky uncle.
Right.
The rookies and stuff have a problem with him because they want to come in and do it their way.
Right. I was here at 7 a.m., but
The meeting had been started.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Good stuff. Can you hang out for another break?
One more.
Okay.
One more, yeah.
If you need to go, please go. But Jay Foreman, the Hall of Famer, would love to have him around, and we're going to get him for one more break, and we'll be back. It's Husker Rewind, Mike Melbye, Jay Foreman, Tom Stevens. More after this.
This is Brian at Midwest Bank, and we've been proudly serving clients since 2008, and we're in this location in January 2020 at 7th and Pioneers Boulevard. Our new branch will provide all the convenient services you're looking for in a bank, along with friendly staff. We're starting a business or expanding your business. Our team is here for you, your community, your bank, Midwest Bank. Find out more at midwestbank.com, member FDIC.
When you were a kid, clubs were cool. Robotics club, space club, and stuff like that. But what do adults get? Book clubs and quilting clubs? No, forget that. How about a margarita club? Get to Upside Bar and Lounge and join the best club in town. 10 flavors of margarita like Maui Wowie, burnt pineapple, and mango tango. Try all 10 of them and receive your own souvenir margarita glass. Make it your new Monday night tradition. $4 margaritas and $4 taco baskets. Grab your crew and head on over Monday nights or any night. Upside Bar and Lounge at 29th and Pine Lane.
Early break with Sip and Jake.
So Matt Davis in the studio, president of the 1890 Initiative, Nebraska's NIL operation.
We have some big things that we're going to announce, I think, in the next, few weeks, few months for sure. So I think 1890 and the trajectory for our company is really good. I think we have the ability to have a top, 5 collective in the country. I think we're trending that way.
Early break with Sip and Jake from 6 to 8 every weekday morning on 93.7 The Ticket.
At Parkview Animal Hospital in Lincoln, it's not just a professional care that sets them apart, but their warm staff and state-of-the-art facilities. Whether it's for a routine checkup or a comprehensive medical procedure, at Parkview, you're just another number, but a valued member of their caring family. Visit them at pahlincoln.com today and in person just south of 14th and Pine Lake Road. Parkview Animal Hospital, your pet, our passion. For happier, healthier furry friends.
I know that a lot of times, Mom, it might not seem like I'm listening to you, but I am. I hear you. And what you say really does matter to me.
I mean, let's be honest. No kid likes rules, but I get why we have them. And I know it's because you care.
For more information about talking with your kids about underage use of alcohol and other drugs, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
Sponsored by DHHS and aired in cooperation with the Nebraska Broadcasters Association and this station.
This is Sunday Rewind on 97 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
Welcome back, Husker Rewind. Mike Melbye, Tom Stevens, and Jay Foreman. Fan Day today. Were you a fan of Fan Day?
I mean, sure. Yeah. I mean, look, my dad taught me early in life, because we'd be out and people would just be hounding him for stuff, to sign stuff. And I always asked him as I got older, I was in high school, and he's like, listen, always be appreciative that people want your time and autograph. And so that's the way I looked at it. I mean, I enjoyed talking to some people. I gave an analogy. I was talking to some friends yesterday that you remember, like when the Romans would go off to war, back in there with the, whatever, the Roman army, and they'd be marching through the towns and all the people would give you, clapping you, patting you on the back. That's what Fan Day is. You about to be on lockdown because they're marching right to the dorms right now and they're on lockdown.
You hear this all the time, that, the fans are great, but sometimes there can be too much pressure that, they show up even when we're bad. And sometimes there's a pressure associated with it. Do you buy that?
No, not at all. Pressure comes from not being prepared. That's where pressure comes from.
Yeah.
There is no pressure if you're prepared. You might feel, I was nervous before every game. and stuff like that. But pressure, it comes from not being prepared. Why would you be upset that people are want you to play up to the standard? Because they know.
But you've seen it at Memorial Stadium where Nebraska almost plays better in some cases. Over the last several years, they played in some cases better on the road than they have at home because you can feel them imploding at home.
Yeah. Well, I think there's it's a lack of focus, individual focus. I think that's what it comes down to.
It's not pressure.
No pressure. Well, if you're not focused, then the pressure jumps on you. If you're more interested in coming out there, and I used to say dress, I call it dress. Some guys were playing dress up, Halloween, dress up like a football player and had no intentions of getting in the game. That's pressure.
Yeah.
Because if I roll my ankle and you got to go in the game, that's pressure.
Yeah.
Okay, speaking of fans, I want to give a shout out to Vince in Napa, California. He always tunes in. No, he's a big fan of your show as well. And I want to use what you just said. Pressure is not being prepared. No pressure means you are fully 100% prepared. Bud Crawford last night after the fight made the comment. He hit me with 2 overhand rights in the second, and I knew it was the best punches he could throw, and I immediately thought it's going to be a long night for him.
Yeah. I mean,
that's a man that's prepared.
But listen to Earl Spence. He's from Texas. I've spent a lot of time in Texas. Everybody's like, he talks slow. That's just how some people in Texas talk. Earl Spence was not prepared.
No.
Okay. Yeah. I would not be surprised that if he does not fire his trainer, probably already has. Okay. He was ill prepared. But then you saw the maximum preparation in Bud Crawford. You saw the maximum focus. You saw the maximum want to, right? It was superior. I tweeted out the analogy, right? This fight is built up to be a mega fight. 95 Huskers, 95 Gators. One was prepared. We prepared 3 weeks longer than Florida. They didn't start practice until they got down there. It was all glitz and glamour. They had a plan until they got hit in the mouth. And then next thing you know, Earl Spence was just flailing. I mean, Bud was phenomenal. This is not it. That's in way up here. But Earl Spence, you should be embarrassed as a boxer.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I did a little Golden Gloves or whatever. And I liked it until I was watching a fight and saw the dude bleeding. I was like, yeah, I'm done. You had his trainer was talking about offense the whole time.
Yeah.
Right. So that's the glitz and glamour. It's like Ohio State. They want to go get all this glitz and glamour. You know what Michigan's doing? They're getting physical and defense. And he didn't talk to him once about his defense.
I think the boxing analogy is good for 95 Nebraska, the era he played in, because you remember so many occasions in the Tyson era where he would just put the fear of what into everybody, and they wanted to just fall down.
But you know where the fear comes from? No, you know where the intimidation. This is what people don't really understand about intimidation. You right? Mm-hmm. Everybody. So when you see guys look at each other, like go out to a coin toss, everybody's like, all right, sizing each other up, anxiety, right, and nervousness. The intimidation comes from bringing to fruition everything you've seen on tape and then some.
Yeah.
Okay. That's what it was. So that's where you saw Earl Spence. That's where you saw Florida. Okay. When we saw Florida in that first couple run plays, I was like, oh no, that they're not that fast. Like, dude, we played like this ain't this is not. You're kind of like Bud was like in the middle of like 4th, 5th, 6th round. You're waiting for him to do something.
Right.
And I was like, this is it. This is it. So the reason why I equated it to it, because I firmly believe that Bud will go down as long as he stays focused as one of the best boxers, period, of all time. Right. Because here's the reason why. Like 95 Nebraska, we played the toughest schedule as far as top 10 teams and obliterated them. Bud has not backed down or ran away from top 10 talent and fought everybody in their prime up to today. That's the analogy.
Yeah. Well, we're going to let you go.
Yeah.
Jay, I didn't want to take too much of your time. Great stuff as always.
I appreciate it, man.
Love old school.
Are we going to get some? We need, because you can't. I've been a fan of his, though. It was after the Minnesota game. Right.
I'm scared now.
No, when you did you were on the Twitter and did your after game thing. I was like, I like this dude, man.
Well, he's a talented dude.
And you can fit in in Minnesota too, because up in Minnesota, there's a lot of guys with the beard and the ponytail. You fit right in up there, man.
I am Norwegian. That's all I'm saying.
Well, then there you go.
Yeah.
You are. You one of us then,
Yeah,
right?
Ulen, Minnesota is like the hotbed of the Melbye clan. So
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
Jay,
Oh,
look
Viking.
forward to you and your dad's show.
Yeah. And then I'm doing an after game show. I think that was a big thing too, to kind of keep it in here with the studio.
Yeah.
I don't know if we'll be there. I'm sure we'll be there eventually. It's kind of like the Big Red project down there. We'll get there eventually, so we'll be able to take calls and after game stuff.
Perfect. Yeah, the Husker post game show. Jay Foreman involved in that, and I hope you'll be back on our show
Anytime, man.
Yeah,
Anytime. Appreciate it.
Jay Foreman, the Hall of Famer, back with more after this.
Are you working in or looking to get into the electrical construction industry? The electrical workers of Local Union 265 are now hiring licensed journeymen and apprentices and are offering great pay and benefits. Call Mike at 402-875-1034 to apply. Start your electrical career today.
Gray Diesel and Equipment Services is hiring and seeking motivated applicants. Gray offers a second-to-none benefit package that includes health, dental, vision, 401k, paid vacation, and paid holidays. They offer great pay and tuition reimbursement or a tool purchase program for qualified candidates. It's a fun, friendly team with lots of variety and work assignments, so there's something for everybody. View and apply for their job openings today at grayusa.com. Visit them in person just off I-80 and North 56th Street. Come be a part of the Gray difference.
Hi, everyone. Kendall Warnock with A1 Automotive in downtown Lincoln. If you're looking for an automotive repair facility you can genuinely trust, we would be grateful for the opportunity to earn your business repairing your vehicle. We have ASE master technicians and qualified to work on a variety of vehicles from Hondas to Porsches, Jaguars to Toyotas, and Chevrolets to Fords. We pride ourselves on customer relationship, and we would be grateful if you call at 402 60 answer.
Join Planet Fitness now and get the PF49 in a month. You'll enjoy an experience.
Like access to more than trade.
Yep.
And
yes.
Can I bring a friend every time?
Sure.
Can my friend be a horse?
Nay. Sorry. Get the PF card and feel fit-tacular. Only $24.99 a month. Our most popular membership, the PF Black Card, is your ticket to getting all the perks. Join today. See Club for details.
Getting experience to jumpstart a meaningful career can be difficult, and education can cost a fortune. Luckily, AmeriCorps can be the solution. With AmeriCorps, you'll earn a stipend and education award while helping people. Plus, you'll gain professionals and make connections to help you build your career. If you're ready to start a career you can be proud of, visit SoutNebraska.gov/service to find a program for you. Paid for by Serve Nebraska, aired with the Nebraska Broadcasters Association and this station.
My early Alzheimer's was hard to take, but it gave my mom and me time to plan together.
Talk to your family about seeing a doctor. Go to alz.org/time to talk. A message from the Alzheimer's Association and the Ad Council.
This is Sunday Rewind on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
Busy show today. Bill Bush, former Nebraska football assistant, and now on early break. On the show in the first hour, just got done talking to the Hall of Famer Jay Foreman, Nebraska linebacker, and now we shift to a writer, Omaha World Herald writer, Evan Bland. How you doing, Evan?
Hey, happy Sunday, gents. How's it going?
Good. It's going good. We think sometimes, it's the day before the fall camp, and fall camp does start tomorrow, but big story that we didn't expect. Bob Wager gets busted for a DUI and immediately resigns. How surprised were you, not only by the DUI, but the resignation immediately?
Yeah, I mean, I did not see that one coming. I spent most of Friday coming back from Big Ten Media Days in Indianapolis and got back and was kind of settling in when that bomb dropped, late in the afternoon. And it certainly had no inkling of that during media days with Matt Rule or the players, of course. I mean, the incident didn't occur until late Tuesday night anyway, I think it was. So, yeah, it's a surprising deal. I think the abruptness with which it was resolved in terms of resignation was head-turning. We don't know exactly what his blood alcohol level was. We know from the Lincoln Police Department report that it was at least roughly twice the legal limit. So maybe some of those details will come out the further we go along. But, I think it does send a pretty clear message that, and we've heard it all offseason from Matt Rule and from his coaches and the players, that there's a certain culture, a certain standard that you have to follow. And if you don't, there's going to be action taken pretty quickly. And in this case, it was technically a resignation from Bob Wager. Don't know, how much choice necessarily he had in the matter, but it's disappointing because it was going to be interesting to see what he could have done as a longtime legendary high school coach in Texas, the state of Texas. He was somebody whose personal story was cool, coming from the East Coast and kind of falling in love with the Friday night cultures and driving his motorcycle down there and doing that. And had a chance to talk with him a couple of different times, and he seemed like an honest and earnest sort of guy. And unfortunately, it won't be able to manifest itself into the season.
Evan Bland from the Omaha World Herald joining us here on Husker Rewind on 93.7 The Ticket. Evan, you said you were, coming back from Big Ten Media Days. Is Matt Rule now the new king of Big Ten Media Days? Because it kind of seemed like it.
Well, he ate all of his tests, that's for sure. There was no long opening statement. So, for what that's worth, he did give a little bit of thanks to the administrators and laid out a little bit about the players that were representing Nebraska there. But he, for the most part, was just really thoughtful as usual, conversational. I don't know if you could say he's the king of Big Ten Media Days based on the size of the crowd that he draws. That's pretty typically reserved for Ryan Day and Jim Harbaugh. And I would say even guys like Mel Tucker drew a pretty big crowd at the 2-day event there at Lucas Oil Stadium. But, I don't think it was any surprise. I mean, what we've seen from Matt Rule in the offseason, what he's shown throughout his career is somebody who can command a room, somebody who's a good communicator, who can give you a deep thought. That's all the kind of stuff that will ingratiate you to national media. That's the kind of thing I thought that, is just kind of what he's been about. And that was kind of my takeaway from the event, was there were no big, bold statements, right? There's no, you better get us now sort of stuff. But it was just a steady stream of just cultural reminders, like all the stuff about getting 1% better every day and how success is not talent, but it's achievement. Like just all these little things that maybe you forget, and you kind of just get a sense of what it would be like in North Stadium, because he's so consistent with it. He's so dynamic about presenting it. Like you can't help but sort of feel that culture. So I think that's what we saw from Matt Rule. And I think that's just a good sort of tone to set, where you're at this crossroads between patience on the one hand, but also urgency to win games, to get to a bowl game now. I thought he struck all the right notes.
The representatives from the players' standpoint, Ethan Piper spoke. You had Jeff Sims, the quarterback, Luke Reimer. Who of those stood out to you?
Sims, I think. I mean, Ethan Piper, I thought, had sort of midway through last year became one of the unofficial spokespeople of the offense. He's a really honest, quote, thoughtful. Luke Reimer did a good job as well, just talking about sort of the off-season process of figuring out who's in and who's out and that sort of thing. But to me, it was about Sims, and he was really interesting over the course of half an hour, just talking about a lot of the little stuff. Like it wasn't just about, hey, let's get used to the offense, let's sort of announce my presence. Like he was somebody who kind of laid out, like, man, he can lead these guys. He needs to get to know them. And so he, would go through the online roster on his phone and learn names. He kind of had a funny little story about how, like, when he wouldn't know a guy's name still, he'd just be like, hey, what's up, bro? And then he'd remember his face and go try to quickly learn that guy's name. So you could actually identify them specifically in big moments as you go along into the season. So I thought that was interesting. Like he was really comfortable in the spotlight. Hasn't been afraid or shied away from the idea of going out into the community and talking with fans. And I know a lot of that maybe seems like off-season stuff or small stuff, but man, Nebraska's had quarterbacks in the past, 10, 15 years who have been talented, but maybe they haven't had that it factor where guys can rally behind them or where they really maybe even enjoy sort of the fishbowl life that being a Nebraska quarterback can be. And it seems like Sims is that guy. Now, Adrian Martinez handled the pressure pretty well publicly. Casey Thompson did as well. That didn't always translate into on-field success, but it did feel like this is a guy who wants to get better, who has the physical gifts. And just after spending some time with him on Thursday in Indianapolis, I just think it was another reminder that some of those intangibles that you have to have were there. And I think that's important when you start evaluating what Nebraska can be this fall.
Evan Bland from the Omaha World-Herald joining us here on Husker Rewind. Evan, the running back room is one that I want to get your take on. It's considered by some kind of the best room. Who's going to come out of it, and what do you see that room taking shape? How do you see that room taking shape once we get a couple of games into the season?
Yeah, I've heard that too, kind of the deepest room conversation. I don't know. It feels like we've had that conversation before in the past, and what that's ended up being was like, okay, you have a lot of running backs that you like, but maybe nobody who was able to take that lead feature back role and run with it. And so I think ultimately that's what you'd like to get to. And of course you need the depth, and there's going to be wear and tear at that position naturally, but it is a fascinating position because I think Gabe Ervin is a guy who was one of the biggest off-risers. I mean, he took a major step in the spring. The staff loves his speed, his versatility. He's probably the guy at this point before camp starts that I would point to and think that maybe he would get that first carry in the opener at Minnesota. But they've got Anthony Grant, who started strong last year and who probably wore down a little bit. I think you can find a role for him. Ramir Johnson certainly was somebody who just fell off the radar last year. He wasn't hurt, but just kind of out of favor with the coaching staff. You wonder what he can do with a little bit more of a look. And they've got guys like Quentin Ives and Emmett Johnson and a number of other just sort of intriguing pieces as well. So it certainly doesn't seem like it's a bare position, but again, I just who the guy is going to be that sort of takes over that feature role and can run with it. I think it might be Ervin. 2 years ago, he was that guy who started as a true freshman in the opener and looked like he was rolling at ACL injury at Oklahoma. So maybe it's him. But I just think, again, what we've seen from that position the last few years, the concerns with the offensive line, it's a position that I just kind of want to see it before sort of crowning it as maybe one of the better positions on the offense.
He's Evan Bland of the Omaha World-Herald joining us on Husker Rewind. Kind of a bold move. Maybe it's not, but I don't remember it ever being done at Nebraska. We're moving into Selleck Hall for fall camp. It's kind of an NFL mentality type thing. Does that signal a sense of urgency? What does it signal to you?
To me, it signals a devotion to culture and really going all in on that. And, I think about what Matt Rule has said often in the offseason, where it's like a lot of the little things that he does are aimed toward sort of increasing that brotherhood. And it's hard in today's society when everyone has a phone, when everyone is busy in class, everyone is, has their own sort of personal aspirations to play professional football. Like, it's hard sometimes to play for that guy on your right and on your left with all these other things going on, NIL, of course. And so, I think that's one of the reasons why, for example, they play a lot of ping pong, because you got to be present for that. You got to be engaged for that. I think this is another example where you work hard all day, you grind in fall camp, and then you go back to the dorms, and like, you're going to be rooming with somebody maybe that you don't, maybe that you do, and you just haven't gotten to know, when you're going to bed at night, and with all this, the routine, maybe that goes with the day outside of football. So I think that's just another way to sort of, to force that on guys, where it's like, okay, we're going to be present, we're going to get to know each other. And if you can do all those things, then maybe that makes a little bit of a difference in the fourth quarter, at Wisconsin in November, because you're going to be pushing a little bit more. So I think, the culture piece has been something they push so hard. And this, to me, is just another way that you can move forward with that heading into the season.
Evan Bland from the World-Herald joining us here on Husker Rewind. Evan, Matt Rule is going to get in front of the microphone tomorrow for a press conference heading into fall camp. What do you expect? Obviously, the Wager situation, but what else do you expect to touch on tomorrow?
Yeah, the Wager situation will be one of the first things asked, of course. This is a natural time to catch up on roster roster stuff, right? I mean, fan day is going on today, and Miles Farmer, longtime starter at safety, is not there today. Does that mean anything? Does that not mean anything? That's something that'll be worth asking. Marcus Washington, the receiver, one of the leading receivers last year, had a cast on his hand. Is that, anything? Nothing? Like, these are the sort of things kind of coming out of the summer that we have to catch up on in terms of guys who might be ready. Teddy Prohaska, what's he like coming out of summer, and with his injury last year, Marquise Buford. I mean, Matt Rule did touch on him at Indianapolis, saying that they're going to go slow with him, but what does that mean? Thomas Fidone, is he 100% full go? Eric Gilbert also at tight end. What's his status with his NCAA waiver? Has that been resolved in the last few days? So a lot of kind of little nuts and bolts type things, I think. And then, beyond that, it's just sort of what's the vibe of the first fall camp in the first year with Matt Rule. And I think some of that's going to be the norms that we talked about. Some of that's going to be, how comfortable are the offense and the defense in running what they need to run now versus how much work do they have to do to get ready for Minnesota. I think that'll be interesting as well. And then, we'll hear from some players too, kind of to be determined who that is. But it's always a good, interesting time to catch up with guys coming out of the off season. And again, just having this be a new staff and sort of a new vibe of Nebraska football, I think just adds to the intrigue here heading into August.
Obviously, you're going to ask about Wager. He's now gone. He's resigned. He's the tight end coach. He's being replaced by Josh Martin. How big of a hole do you expect that to be? Is that a big deal for Nebraska?
Well, again, obviously you don't want to have these kind of situations crop up, and especially on the eve of fall camp, the way that this one did. But it is, I think, worth noting, and to Matt Rule's credit, that the guy that they're putting in there is no slouch. I mean, Josh Martin has coached at SMU. He's coached at Arizona State, both as, a full-time assistant at those stops. I know he was at the high school level in Texas last year. His dad, incidentally, is the executive director of the Texas High School Coaches Association, which, of course, is something that Matt Rule has made a priority to speak at for a long time since he's been at Baylor. So I'll just be fascinated to see what that transition's like. It's a good room, obviously. We touched on Fidone and Eric Gilbert. Nate Borkerture went on scholarship this year, so that's actually a pretty deep position, even though they're moving on from Chancellor Brewington and Travis Vokalek. So, Josh Martin inherits a pretty good situation there, I think, with guys who would be invested and ready to roll no matter who their position coach was. But yeah, I think that'll be fascinating too, to see kind of how that transition goes and how that may or may not affect what Nebraska wants to do.
Evan, always enjoy reading your stuff, and we'll get lots of it with the season just around the corner. Might see you tomorrow.
Sounds great. Here we go, guys. Thanks.
There we go. Evan Blatt of the Omaha World Herald recorded earlier in the show, actually before we went on the air. Evan with good stuff. Do want to mention a couple of things that we haven't hit on, aside from maybe at the top of the hour in the starting gate. Nebraska's in Spain. You're playing basketball. They play basketball once every 4 years. They allow them to do one of these European trips, and they're in Spain this year, where they have no cell phone coverage, and that was one of the reasons that Fred Hoiberg wanted to take them over there. Unity thing, but also you can't be looking at your phone the whole time. But there's a lot of guys out that will not be playing for Nebraska. Blaise Keita
K-Thay's going to be there, right?
Is K-Say going to be there?
No. I was waiting for you to go, no. And then I was going to say, Rick Mast is going to be there.
I'm sorry. I didn't play along very well. Yeah, K-Say Tamanaga is playing for his national team. And you've got Rick Mast, who's out, who will be playing for his national team. Josiah Alec has an injury. He's out. Blaise Keita has an injury. He's out. So your tallest player is going to be Bryce Williams, who's 6'7". Juwan Gary will be there. He's back from a shoulder injury that set him out last year. Cale Jacobson, there's been some talk. The walk-on will play center part of the time. But I think you'll get some good out of this. I'm really interested in Ramel Lloyd and what he can bring.
I think Ramel Lloyd is going to have he's going to have a season where people are going to be like, okay, now I understand why he was the top 100 recruit.
Well, he's a big played with Bronny James. We mentioned Bronny James had the heart
cardiac
attack,
arrest.
the cardiac arrest. but he played with Bronny James in high school. He's 6'6". He's kind of a tweener. He's not really a true point guard, but he has the ability to play point guard. We'll see how well he does. We're not going to hear a lot of reports. From what I've seen, Robin Wash at BC have said hey, there's no cell coverage, first of all.
Other than the hotels.
Other than the hotels, but they're not doing a live broadcast of these games. It sounds like you're not going to get a lot of stats from these games. But it will help guys like, I think, Jawan Carey, who's trying to get back in the fold. Bryce Williams, I think, will contribute a lot. Casey will not be there, but Sam Hoiberg will not be there as well. He's also injured.
Been acting up.
So hopefully you can get guys, Aaron Eulis, I believe he's available. Yeah, he's available. So there's a point guard option. Jamarcus Lawrence can play point guard. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. I'm trying to find out who the point guard might be.
Well, I think it's going to be Aaron Eulis on night one, game one. I think it's going to be Aaron Eulis that's going to kind of run the one, but you're going to see Jamarcus Lawrence running the one. You're going to see Casey, I think, at times run the one. I could see Jawan Gary bringing the ball up. Bryce Williamson's going to probably bring the ball up at some. I mean, they've got a lot of different people that can bring the ball up, but again, he's playing a 5-out that's kind of positionless. And bottom line is, if they make shots, they are going to be so scary this year.
Well, and there's some who say if they shoot 40%, that's actually what they should shoot against some of these club teams, which I know are called all-star teams, but they're club teams.
Yeah.
They're not nearly as good as Big Ten teams. I have heard good reports on Eli Rice, who apparently led all scorers in the scrimmage leading to Spain before they left.
Yeah, I was talking about it last year before the season was even over, with him being our only high school recruit last year, that, don't underestimate how good this young man is, because he is the best player on one of the best high school teams at IMG Academy in the country. And he has he's lived up to the billing that I know I had heard. So looking forward to watching him play.
The other note I wanted to throw in before we leave, Nebraska picked second behind Wisconsin. No big surprise. They've won like 4 straight. But second, that's not bad. I mean, in a league like the Big Ten.
Well, Nebraska hasn't beaten Wisconsin in 4 years. So,
well, this is the year. This is the year they're going to take down the Badgers.
Yep.
We're out. We're leaving.
You're out. I'm staying.
That's right. I'm out. Mike is staying for the finish line, which happens in about 20 seconds or so.
Yeah.
Well, we go into the commercial break, and then he'll come back out, and then he'll do the show. But I am leaving. I'm going home. We'll see you next week. Training camp starts tomorrow.
Looking forward to it.
See you later, Mike.
At Parkview Animal Hospital in Lincoln, it's not just a professional care that sets them apart,